India relaxes FDI rules for China. But why does caution still prevail? Has India finally opened its investment doors to China? After 2020, India imposed strict restrictions on investments from China and other neighboring countries. Now, the government has introduced a partial relaxation in the Foreign Direct Investment (FDI) policy. But the real questions are, is this an economic necessity or a strategic recalibration? And the biggest question, will this move lead to a surge in Chinese capital inflow? Or is it just a controlled policy opening? Today we will understand what changes India has made in its FDI policy, how these changes differ from Press Note 3, 2020, and why the government is still maintaining strategic caution. 1. What was Press Note 3? In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, India introduced a rule called Press Note 3. According to this regulation, if an investment comes from a country that shares a land border with India, such as China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Afghanistan, then that investment cannot use the automatic route. Instead, every investment proposal must go through the government approval route. The main objectives behind this rule were preventing opportunistic takeovers, protecting Indian companies from being acquired cheaply during the crisis, addressing national security concerns. 2. What has changed now? The government has now introduced a partial relaxation in this policy. Under the new rule, checkmark. If a foreign investment has up to 10% beneficial ownership from a neighboring country, then the investment can now proceed through the automatic route. This means not every small investment will require government clearance. The compliance burden will reduce, and foreign capital inflow could increase. 3. Fast-track approval system. Another major change introduced by the government is the fast-track approval mechanism. For certain manufacturing sector investments, a 60-day approval timeline has been established. These sectors include electronics manufacturing, capital goods, solar cell manufacturing, semiconductor supply chain components. The objective is to transform India into a global manufacturing hub, strengthen supply chain diversification, encourage technology transfer into the Indian economy. 4. Why China may benefit. In reality, many Chinese companies have been interested in investing in India. However, because of Press Note 3 restrictions, several major investment proposals were stalled for years. Examples include investments in electric vehicle manufacturing, electronics supply chains. Many of these proposals remain stuck in approval pipelines. With the new policy changes, joint ventures may become easier. India's manufacturing ecosystem could strengthen, and the country may gain access to advanced technological capabilities. 5. Why does caution still prevail? The most important point here is that India has not completely opened its doors. The government is still maintaining several strategic safeguards. For example, Chinese investors cannot easily acquire majority control in companies. National security screening mechanisms will continue. Investments in critical sectors will still require approval. India's approach can be described as small yard, high fence strategy, meaning greater openness in limited sectors, but strict protection around sensitive industries. 6. Economic reality, the trade deficit factor. Another major factor behind India's cautious approach is the India-China trade imbalance. In FY 2024-25, India's trade deficit with China reached nearly $99 billion. This indicates India imports far more goods from China, while exports to China remain comparatively low. Therefore, the government aims to maintain a balanced strategy. Allow Chinese capital inflow, but avoid excessive economic dependency. 7. Global geopolitics is also a factor. This policy shift is not purely an economic decision. There are significant geopolitical drivers behind it, such as global supply chain realignment, rising US-China economic tensions, multinational companies seeking manufacturing diversification. India wants global corporations to shift production under the China Plus One strategy, and for this, FDI liberalization becomes an important policy tool. Conclusion. So overall, India has indeed introduced a selective relaxation in FDI rules for China and other neighboring countries. But this is not a completely open door. It represents a carefully calibrated policy shift where India is trying to balance economic growth and national security interests. Now, the real question is, will this policy lead to a significant surge in Chinese investments in India, or will it remain merely a symbolic policy adjustment? The answer to this will ultimately shape the future trajectory of India-China economic relations in the coming years.